So I skipped the first part, and you can see I just went all the way down to the practice on page 278. We're going to start here. I think it's an easier place to start than with the story problem. So you can see right down here, our instructions say write the decimal point in the product. Write the zeros in the product where necessary. So they already did the multiplication for you. We just need to add the decimal point in. So look at what is different about this. You have in number 1 right here, we did 2/10 times 2/10. So remember, when you are multiplying decimals, you just pretend the decimal points are not there and you multiply it as normal. So you can see this would just be 2 times 2, which is 4. All right, the second step, remember we said we are going to add up how many decimal places there are in each of the factors, and then we're going to make sure that the product has the same amount of decimal places. So we've got 1 decimal place there, 1 decimal place there. So that's 2 decimal places. So we need to make sure that our product also matches and has 2 decimal places. So we've got a 4 right there. In a whole number, where is the decimal point? It's not shown, but it is always right there after a whole number, right? All of these on number 2, we can assume that it's right there. I'm going over to number 3 over here, and we can assume that the decimal point is right there at the end, right there at the end of number 4, at the end of number 5. See, I just put all those decimal points in right here because every whole number, the decimal point is at the end. So if we're going back to question number 1, we've got to make sure our product has 2 decimal places. Well, right now it doesn't have any because it's a whole number. So we're going to move it over. Now it has 1 decimal place. We've got to move it all the way over to here so that it has 2 decimal places. So right here where there's this space, we need to add a 0. That is the only thing that is different from yesterday's lesson to today's lesson, is that you're adding that 0 right there. Okay, let's move on to number 2. We have 9/100 times 4/10. Okay, you can see they did not line up the decimal points, right? Because we are multiplying as if there are no decimal points. It's the opposite of addition and subtraction of decimal points, where it's super important to line up those decimal points. Remember how we drilled that in for addition and subtraction? Well, now for multiplication, you're going to completely forget about that rule. Do not line them up. Just simply multiply as if they were whole numbers. So 9 times 4 is 36. You can see that in number 2 here. So 36, we've got the decimal point at the end. But let's add up how many decimal places are in our factors. We have 1, 2, 3 decimal places. Our product right now has 0 decimal places, so we've got to move it. Now it has 1 decimal place. Now it has 2. We need 3. We're going to have to move it over to here, and we're going to have to add in a 0. Okay, again, this lesson is completely about moving the decimal point over and adding the zeros that are necessary. All right, let's move on to number 3. 25/100 times 3/10. All right, so we took 3 times 5, and we got 15. You don't see the one up there that they carried. Then there's 3 times 2. You see that right there? 3 times 2. 6 plus 1 more is 7, so you get 75 if you take 25 times 3. All right, we've got 1, 2, 3 decimal places. 1, 2, 3. It goes right there. We have to add a 0, right? You didn't have enough spots to go over. All right, moving on to 4. 3 times 3 is 9. How many decimal places? 1, 2, 3. That's it. Look at down here, there was no decimal place. This was just 3, a whole number. So we're going to move this decimal point. 1, 2, 3. Decimal point goes there. See those 2 spaces right here and right here? Sorry, this is messy. I'm trying to work with this little tiny pen here. All right, so the answer is going to be 0.009 for that one. All right. Anytime during these videos, if you feel like, okay, Mrs. Van Zanten, I think I've got it, I don't need to go through any more examples, you are totally free to bow out and go ahead and work on your classwork or your IXL or whatever I've got in the lesson. I'm just going to do quite a few for those who might want to make sure you watch more examples until you've got it. Again, when you think you've got it, you can tap out on this video, unless you like the sound of my voice. Okay, so let's go on to number 5. All right, so now we've got, let's see, 8 times 2 is going to be 16. 8 times 0 is 0 plus 1. You know what, they just gave the answer here. Let me go backwards. All right, I'm going backwards because, let me put that back there. I'm going backwards because they gave us the answer here. They don't even want us to go through all the multiplication. They just basically set up here. All they want us to do is write the decimal point in the product. So all we're really doing is going 1, 2. 2 decimal places, 1, 2. It goes right there. Okay? They did the math for us on those, so I was doing way too much work. All right, now down here is where they are actually saying multiply. All right? They didn't give us the answer. So we've got to say, for number 6, 2 times 4, how easy is that, right? We're pretending there's no decimal points. So there we go, 8. How many decimal places? 1, 2. That means it started out here on a whole number, 1, 2. 0.08 or 8 hundredths. Okay, let's do number 7. 5 times 2 is 10. Where are we going to put that decimal point? 1, 2, 3. There's 3 decimal places in our factors. So we're going to take the decimal point and go 1, 2, 3. It goes right there, and there's our 0. Okay? Trying to see if there's anything harder here. Let me get out of here for 1 second. Go back. I'm going to pull this up. We're going to go to page 2. All right. Now, right here where it says find the product in these practice ones, let's do this. Right here where it says find the product. Okay, when they are written, for instance, like this, side by side, like in this one, they're written side by side. You're going to want to put them on top of each other in most cases. Now, for this one particularly, you can see that if you take away all the decimal points, what are you left with here in this first one? What are you left with in this problem? Oh man, my pen just died. Okay. What are you left with? You're really left with 11 times 4, which you can do in your head. You can say that's 44. And then all you have to do is count up the decimal places. That one's interesting. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, count those yourself, even though my pen's not working here. There's 4 decimal places, but you only have 44 as your product. So you're going to have to move that decimal place over 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, which means your answer is going to be decimal point 0044. So you might be able to do some of these in your head. When in doubt, make sure that you do it on paper. But you might be able to go next to number 17 and say, if I take away the decimal place, I can probably do that in my head. What is 25 times 3? You can also think of it like as if you had a quarter and you had 3 of them. How much money would you have? You'd have 75 cents. So the answer to this one would be 75. You can do that in your head. Now the final answer isn't 75 because you have to say, how many decimal places do I have? 1, 2, 3 decimal places are in the factors. So for 75, you'd need to move it over once, twice, 3 times. Your answer would be 0.075 for number 17. So again, if you think you can do it in your head, then that's great. Go ahead and try that. If not, you're going to want to actually do the multiplication. All right, so that is what we need for that one. I want you to look down at number 36. Don't let these ones confuse you. They put these in a lot of your math books, which is really good. It's kind of incorporating. Remember we talked about how adding letters in our math problems basically is kind of like pre-algebra. It's getting you ready for algebra. So look at number 36. I can't mark it with my pen. That just died. But if you look at 36, it says n times 5/10 when n equals 0.065 or 65 thousandths. And you say, what is that? Okay, that's all they're doing is telling you they want you to take n times 5/10. And they're giving you what n equals. They're saying when n equals 65 thousandths. So just put that 65 thousandths in place of where the n is, and you end up with 65 thousandths times 5/10. And then you just ended up with a normal decimal multiplication problem like numbers 1 through 35. Okay, so don't let 36 through 39 throw you. All they're doing is putting a letter in place, and then they tell you what the letter value is. So you just replace it in there. Also, look down at numbers 40 through 43. These instructions kind of throw you guys sometimes, and I can understand that. It's kind of a wonky way to give instructions, but it says simplify using the order of operations. And what that basically means is they want you to solve the problem, and they're saying you're going to need to use your order of operations. So for instance, if you look at number 40, you'll have to think back to when we talked about PEMDAS way back at the beginning of the year. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Remember that? That's the order that you do the operations in. So parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division together from left to right, and then addition and subtraction together from left to right. So if you look at number 40 here, the first thing you want to do is the parentheses. So first you need to take 2 minus 75 hundredths. Okay, so think for a second here. You've got to line up decimals whenever you do addition and subtraction. So you're going to need to line up the decimals for 2 and 75 hundredths. Well, where is the decimal for 2? It's a whole number, so the decimal point is after the whole number. So it's like saying 2 decimal point and then 0.75. So you're going to line those up. You're going to need to add in some zeros, right? So you're going to end up with 2.00 minus 0.75. Line those all up. Make sure your decimal points are right above each other. Okay, and I wish I could be doing this for you, but I cannot stop my video to be doing a screen mirror with you. So we're going to keep moving ahead. But I think you know how to do that because it's review of the last chapter. So once you take 2 minus 0.75, you're going to get 1.25 or 1 and 25 hundredths. Okay, in place of what is in the parentheses. So now your new problem is going to be 1.25 times 0.04. Okay, 1 and 25 hundredths times 4 hundredths. And now you've just worked yourself back to a multiplication decimal problem. Take away the decimals, do your multiplication, and then put the decimal point back where it belongs. All right, so 40 through 43 is just simply means solve, remembering to do the order the correct way. Parentheses first. All right? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and you can go to the next step in your Canvas steps for today. I have an IXL waiting for you and potentially a few problems in your book. All right, thanks guys. See you tomorrow.